The grand hall of Xerelian shimmered with golden light. Alien nobles stood tall in glowing robes. Massive banners waved gently in the air. Musicians played slow notes. All eyes turned toward the large, open door at the end of the hall. The doors creaked open. A small figure stepped in. It was Princess Lixa. She was barely 5 feet tall, tiny compared to her species, the Zayari, who usually stood nearly 8 feet. Her pale blue skin glowed faintly and her eyes were large and golden. Soft wings folded behind her back. A silver birthmark stretched from her neck down her left arm. Her steps were careful, quiet, and no one clapped. She walked down the long path between the nobles. Whispers filled the room. Still small. Is that the princess? Why bring her out again? King Davor, her father, stood on the throne platform. His face was strong and cold. His golden crown gleamed, but his eyes looked empty when they landed on her. One by one, alien males from across the galaxy stood in line. Warriors, scientists, royal sons, all from powerful families. They were here to view the princess, to see if they would choose her for bonding. It was an old tradition. A royal bond was more than marriage. It meant combining powers, alliances, and legacies. But each male took one look at her and stepped back. I decline, the tall, red-skinned warrior said. She is too delicate, the noble from Krattle added. I cannot bond with something that looks like a child, whispered another. One by one, they all rejected her. Lixa didn't cry. She just lowered her head and stood silently at the center of the hall. She had been through this before. Last year, the year before that, every year since she had turned the bonding age. But this time, it was worse. No one looked at her as a living being, just a failure, a symbol of shame for the royal bloodline. Her father raised his hand to speak. We thank all who came today, he said, his voice strong. The bonding ceremony is now closed. You may return to your homes. Lixa turned around quietly and walked back toward the door. The music started again, but no one watched her leave. Except one. In the back corner of the hall, near a marble pillar, stood a human. He wore no royal robes, just a simple black suit with a small flag of Earth on the chest. His hair was dark, eyes sharp, and his face calm. His name was Jack. He had come as part of a human envoy, low rank, not important, just an observer. But when Lixa passed near him, their eyes met for a second, and in that second, Jack didn't see a failure. He saw pain. He saw strength behind silence. He saw a girl who stood tall despite years of rejection. He saw something beautiful. Later, that evening, while the nobles partied and laughed in the upper halls, Jack walked alone through the lower gardens. The air smelled of alien flowers. Lights floated in the trees. He didn't expect to see her again. But there she was, sitting quietly beside a glowing pond, her wings folded around her like a blanket. Jack cleared his throat. I'm sorry, he said gently. For what happened today? Lixa looked up, surprised. She blinked. You're the human? She asked, her voice soft but curious. He nodded. Jack, from Earth. You are not like the others. He smiled. Good. I didn't come here to be like them. Lixa tilted her head. Why talk to me? Aren't you afraid others will laugh? Jack sat beside her. Let them laugh. Doesn't change who you are. There was silence for a moment. Then Lixa whispered, They all think I am weak, useless. Even my father. Jack looked at her. You walked through that hall with your head high even when the whole galaxy turned their backs. That's not weakness. That's strength. Lixa's golden eyes shimmered. No one had ever said that to her. No one had ever sat beside her like this. She looked at him for a long time. Thank you, Jack. And for the first time in many years, she smiled. The royal court buzzed with stories. After the failed bonding ceremony, aliens whispered in corners, laughing at how no one wanted the tiny princess again. Some called it tradition. Others called it a curse. But one rumor spread faster than all others. The human spoke to her. Inside the palace's quiet guest chambers, Jack sat by a large round window, watching the alien moons rise. His communicator buzzed with messages from Earth's embassy. He ignored them. His thoughts were still with the girl who sat alone beside a glowing pond. Her soft voice. Her sad smile. Suddenly, there was a knock. He opened the door and found an armored royal guard, glaring at him. "You are summoned by the council," the guard said. "Now." Jack followed the guard down dark crystal corridors. They entered a chamber with tall alien nobles sitting in floating chairs, faces full of pride and disapproval. "You were seen speaking to Princess Lixa," one said, his voice like sharp metal. Jack didn't flinch. "Yes, I did." "You touched her." "Yes, I did." The nobles hissed among themselves. "She is royal," said another, "but unworthy. We do not allow her to bond, especially not with outsiders." Jack raised an eyebrow. "You mean humans?" Silence. Then a taller noble leaned forward. "Let us be clear, Terran. You are here as a guest, not a suitor. The princess has no value in this court. If you continue to speak with her, you will be sent home." Jack smiled calmly. "I thought she was a person, not an object." The noble's eyes narrowed, but before they could respond, Jack bowed slightly and turned around. "I'll take my chances." That same night, Lixa walked quietly through the lower palace garden. She wasn't expecting anyone, but as she turned a corner near the ancient tree, she saw him again. Jack was waiting, holding 2 glowing fruit drinks in his hands. "You again?" she asked with a soft smile. "I like gardens, and quiet places, and people who don't pretend." Lixa giggled. "That is rare here." They sat together under the tree. The stars above looked like silver dust on black silk. Jack handed her a drink. It tasted sweet and cool. "You're not like the others," she said after a long silence. Jack nodded. "I get that a lot. But why talk to me? I'm nothing here." Jack looked at her gently. "You're everything they're afraid of," she blinked. "Afraid?" "Yes. You're small, but you're still here. They tried to erase you, but you're still standing. That scares them." Lixa looked away. No one had ever said that. No one ever saw her as anything more than a problem to hide. "My father used to call me his little star," she said quietly. "Now he won't even look me in the eyes." Jack leaned back against the tree. "My father died when I was young. But before he did, he told me something I never forgot. Real strength isn't loud. It's what survives when no one claps for it." Lixa stayed quiet for a moment. Then she whispered, "Maybe I'm stronger than I thought." Jack smiled. "You are." Suddenly, a rustling sound came from behind the garden wall. Lixa stood up quickly. Her wings twitched. "Did you hear that?" Before Jack could reply, 2 masked figures jumped over the wall. One held a stun blade. "The other a capture rope. Get away from her!" Jack shouted. The attackers lunged forward. Jack dodged, grabbed a heavy stone lantern, and threw it at one of them. It smashed into the attacker's chest. Lixa screamed as the other aimed at her, but Jack tackled him to the ground, wrestling for the weapon. Guards from the main palace finally arrived, sirens flashing and lights blinding. The attackers vanished into the shadows. Jack helped Lixa to her feet. She was trembling. "Are you okay?" he asked, holding her gently. She nodded, tears in her eyes. They tried to take me." "Someone doesn't want you talking to me," Jack said. Lixa looked up at him. "Then they are too late." Later that night, hidden away in the embassy wing, Jack and Lixa sat side by side. "You don't have to protect me," she said softly. "I want to," he replied. A long silence followed. Outside, the stars kept shining. The palace felt colder that morning. Even with the twin suns rising over the crystal towers, something dark moved beneath the surface. Whispers floated through the halls like smoke. Guards walked faster. Servants avoided eye contact. And behind, Closed doors, a new order was being prepared. Princess Lixa didn't know it yet, but her life was about to change. Deep in the underground level of the palace, a secret meeting took place. A group of high-ranking alien officials sat around a black stone table. Their robes were heavy with symbols of old power. Their faces were twisted in anger. "He's only a human," growled one. "A lesser species. How dare he touch the royal blood?" Another, thinner one, hissed. "It's the girl. She embarrasses the throne. We've tolerated her long enough." "But if we act too fast," said a third, "the humans may react. They are unpredictable." The leader of the group leaned forward, his voice like ice. "Then we don't harm him. Not yet. We remove the girl." Eyes widened. "Exile?" one asked. "Banishment," the leader confirmed. "Send her far away, somewhere cold, quiet, somewhere no one will care if she vanishes." And just like that, her fate was sealed. Above them, Lixa stood in the sunroom, brushing her delicate wings. For the first time in years, her heart felt light. She smiled at her reflection in the glass wall. A knock came. She turned, expecting Jack. But it was not him. Two silent guards entered without speaking. Their eyes were hard, their movements cold. "Princess Lixa," one said, "you are ordered to come with us now." She froze. "Why? What's happening?" They didn't answer. They grabbed her by the arms. At the same time, Jack was in the diplomatic archives, learning about Zayari laws and ancient bonding rights. He believed something wasn't right with how they treated Lixa, the way people looked at her, the rules they bent. Suddenly, an alert blinked on his communicator. "Unauthorized prisoner transport. Level 7 hangar." Jack narrowed his eyes. Ran Lixa stood on a transport ship's loading ramp, her hands bound in glowing cuffs. She looked at her father, who stood across from her, eyes distant and cold. "I don't understand," she said. "Father, why?" King Devor didn't answer. He simply turned and walked away. The ship engines roared to life. That's when Jack burst into the hangar, breathless. "What are you doing?" he shouted. "You're exiling her?" The guards moved to block him, but Jack stepped forward anyway. "She's done nothing wrong. She is royal property," one guard said. "Not your concern." Jack's voice turned to steel. "She's a person, not an object." He looked at Lixa. "Don't be afraid. I'll come for you." Her eyes widened, and for the first time, real fear showed in her face. Then the ship. Door slammed shut. The engines fired, and the ship vanished into the stars. Hours later, in a stolen scout vessel, Jack sat in the pilot's seat. His jaw was tight. His hands gripped the controls. He had followed the ship's flight path. It led to a frozen moon at the edge of the Zayari system, a place known only as Zenthra 9, a mining world long abandoned. No cities, no people, just snow, wind and silence, the perfect place to forget someone. Jack activated stealth mode. His small ship glided silently through icy clouds. Down below, on the ground, Lixa stumbled out of the cold metal cage they called a shelter. The guards who dropped her off were already gone. The snow hit her wings like glass. She fell to her knees. She cried for the first time in years. But then, a sound, a humming. She looked up and saw a tiny ship descending from the sky. Her heart skipped. Could it be? The ship landed with a hiss. The door opened, and Jack stepped out, covered in snow gear, holding a thermal blanket in one hand and a flare torch in the other. "I told you," he said with a grin, "I'd come for you." Lixa ran into his arms. In the middle of a storm in a forgotten place, two souls found each other again. The cold hit harder than any pain she had ever known. Princess Lixa stood with trembling legs in the middle of Zenthra 9's frozen plains. Her wings were stiff with ice. Her thin dress did nothing against the cruel wind. The shelter the guards dropped her in was just a metal box, no heater, no food, just walls and silence. She had been thrown away like trash. Jack's boots crunched against the ice as he carried Lixa through the blizzard. Her body was freezing, but her eyes were open. She clung to him like a dying flame. Inside his small scout ship, he wrapped her in thermal blankets. The heat slowly returned to her fingers. Jack gently rubbed her hands. "You're safe now," he whispered. But Lixa was silent, not because she was weak, but because something inside her had snapped. All her life she had tried to be quiet, polite, patient. It had earned her nothing but exile. Tears rolled down her cheeks. "I don't want to be a princess anymore," she whispered. Jack knelt beside her. "Then be something greater." Hours passed. Jack worked to repair a damaged fuel core. They had barely made it to the surface before a blast knocked out a vital system. Now they were stranded, for at least 2 days, until Jack could fix it. They took shelter in a crashed mining station he found buried under the snow. It was old, rusty, but strong. The walls still held warmth when fire was lit inside. Lixa sat close to the flames, holding her knees. Her wings flickered with light reflecting her emotion. Jack handed her some water. "Tell me about your dreams." Lixa looked up, surprised. "Dreams?" "Yes. What would you do if no one ever controlled you again?" She thought long. "I'd fly," she said softly. "I'd leave the palace. I'd go where no one knew my name, maybe teach children, or build gardens on dead planets." Jack smiled. "Then we'll find a way." She stared at him. "Why are you doing this?" "Because when I looked into your eyes back there, I didn't see a princess. I saw someone brave, someone who deserves more than a cage." Her chest ached from the kindness. She had never felt truly seen until now. That night, as the temperature dropped to deadly levels, the wind outside howled like wolves. Jack tightened the seals on the doors. He set up heat panels powered by what little energy remained in his emergency cells. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the station. Jack grabbed a pulse blade and moved toward the source. A heavy creature, long and scaled with glowing eyes, had crawled into the station through a side crack. It sniffed the air. It hadn't noticed Lixa yet. Jack stepped in front of it, heart racing. He shouted. The beast lunged. Jack fought it off, slicing across its face. The creature roared and fled back into the storm. Lixa rushed to Jack's side, eyes wide with fear. "You're bleeding." He wiped the side of his neck. "Just a scratch." But it wasn't. Blood soaked his collar. He collapsed minutes later. Lixa panicked. She dragged him near the fire, wrapped him in all the blankets. She poured warm water over his wound, cleaning it the way she remembered healers doing long ago. Her hands shook, but she kept going. "Don't die," she whispered, voice cracking. "Please don't leave me." His eyes fluttered. "You fixed me," he said weakly. She nodded. "Like you fixed me." He smiled, then slept. When Jack woke the next morning, sunlight pierced the cracks in the wall. Lixa was curled up beside him, her wings covering them both like a soft blanket. He touched her hand gently. "You stayed." She opened her eyes. "Always." They spent 2 more days in the icy world, surviving on old rations and heat from a broken mining reactor. Jack finally restored the ship's power using scavenged tech. As they prepared to leave, Lixa stood outside for one last moment, looking at the snow. "This place was meant to kill me," she said, "but it saved me instead." Jack stood beside her. "You saved yourself." She looked up at the sky. "What happens now?" Jack stared into her golden eyes. "Now we fly." The icy winds of Zenthra 9 howled behind them as Jack's ship lifted into the sky. Smoke still trailed from the back thrusters, but it flew. Barely. Lixa sat quietly in the co-pilot seat, wrapped in a thick coat, her golden eyes watching the frozen land vanish below. They had escaped exile, but they were not free. Not yet. As they passed through the atmosphere, Jack tapped at the screen, trying to connect to any signal. Static. Too far from the central systems, he muttered. Lixa looked at him. Where will we go? Somewhere safe. Somewhere they won't find us. She nodded slowly, but something inside her tightened. She knew her people. They wouldn't stop. Not after the shame she had brought to the royal house by bonding with a human. She wasn't just unwanted now. She was a threat. By nightfall, they had landed on a nearby moon station. Old, abandoned, but barely alive with backup power. They set up camp inside a sealed cargo bay, surrounded by broken crates and ancient mining bots. Jack worked on the ship's engine while Lixa gathered heat sticks and made light with the leftover glow crystals. They sat together in silence, watching the small fire crackle. Jack looked over at her. You never stop moving. Lixa gave a small smile. If I stop, I think I'll break. He nodded. Then we don't stop. But that silence didn't last. Suddenly, a loud clang echoed through the station. Jack jumped to his feet. Lixa's wings flared, sensing something. Another clang, closer this time. Jack peeked through the cracked door. His face paled. Royal hunters, he whispered. 3 tall armored aliens moved through the shadows, drones flying beside them. Their weapons glowed with blue fire. They weren't here to talk. They were here to end the problem. Jack turned to Lixa. Run. Get to the ship. Lixa didn't move. No. Lixa, no. Her voice was sharp, powerful. I'm tired of running. Tired of being small, being weak, being silent. Jack looked at her, surprised. Then she stepped forward, her hand glowing faintly. The crystals she collected, she had absorbed them into her wings. I may not be a warrior, she said, but I am still royal, and I will fight for the only person who ever fought for me. The door exploded open. The hunters entered, but froze at what they saw. Lixa stood in the center of the room, wings spread wide, glowing brighter than any light in the station. Her body shook not from fear but from power. Something ancient in her blood had awakened. Jack raised his weapon and stood beside her. Ready? She nodded. Let them come. The battle was fast, but fierce. Jack disabled the drones with precise shots. One hunter lunged at him, but Lixa threw a blast of energy from her palm, knocking the attacker across the room. The second one shot at her, but she jumped into the air, flying higher than anyone had ever seen her fly before. Jack shouted, Above. You. Lixa twisted midair, dodged, and fired a second blast. Jack tackled the third hunter to the ground. They struggled. The hunter reached for his blade. Then, slash. A glowing wing sliced through the air, striking the hunter's arm. He dropped the blade. Jack stood over him, panting. Lixa hovered beside him, her eyes glowing like twin suns. The hunters, wounded and defeated, crawled out of the station and vanished into the shadows. When it was over, Jack and Lixa collapsed against a wall, gasping for breath. He looked at her with a stunned smile. That was incredible. She chuckled softly. I didn't know I could do that. You just saved both of us. She looked at him, eyes gentle now. You made me believe I could. Later that night, they repaired what was left of the ship and prepared for the next escape. But something had changed. Lixa was no longer the quiet princess who waited for kindness. She had become something more. A protector, a fighter, a flame in the ice. The stars above burned quietly, but inside Princess Lixa's heart, a storm raged. Jack's ship soared through deep space, scarred from the last battle. The engines pulsed with low power. Inside, silence stretched between the two. Lixa sat by the window, staring at her reflection in the glass. She no longer looked like the forgotten princess. Her wings were stronger now, brighter. Her eyes more focused. Her hands no longer shook. But deep inside, one question burned like fire. What am I now? Jack adjusted the navigation panel, sweat on his brow. He was steering toward a small neutral system, a place where both humans and Zayari had no power, but he knew they were still being tracked. You should rest, he told her. I can't, Lixa whispered. You did everything right back there. She turned to him. And still they're coming. He knew she was right. Royal ships had been spotted leaving Zayari Prime, fast and fully armed. The Empire had chosen to erase its shame no matter the cost. Lixa was now not just exiled, but marked for execution. And Jack? Simply a human who had gone too far. Hours later, their ship was pulled out of warp space by a stasis net. The stars blinked out. Lights flashed red. Jack's console screamed warnings. A large Zayari battlecruiser blocked their path. Lixa stepped forward, already knowing what was next. A voice echoed through the ship. Surrender the human, or both of you will be destroyed. Jack grabbed his weapon. We're not going down like this. But Lixa touched his arm gently. Wait. He looked at her. Lixa, don't. She held his gaze. I have to end this. They landed aboard the royal cruiser. Jack's wrists were bound in, glowing cuffs. Lixa walked beside him, her head high, even though guards circled them with stun rifles. At the center of the command deck stood her father, King Davor, cold, unmoved. You disappoint me, he said. You could have been hidden forever, silent. Safe. I was never safe, Lixa replied. Not with you, not with any of them. The king looked at Jack with disgust. You bonded with a human. You defiled our legacy. Lixa stepped forward. No, I chose him. Murmurs rippled through the room. Davor narrowed his eyes. You have no right to choose. That is not our way. Lixa raised her voice. Then your way is broken. The king raised his hand. Execute the human. Guards moved toward Jack, but Lixa stepped in front of him, arms wide, wings glowing bright. I invoke the right of soul flame, she shouted. Gasps filled the air. That right was ancient, older than kings. A sacred vow. If completed, no one could separate them, not even death. You don't understand what this means, the king growled. I do, Lixa said. And I am not afraid. She turned to Jack. Will you take the vow with me? Jack looked into her eyes. I already have. The ship's systems paused. The ancient rite was automatically broadcasted to the Council of Elders. By law, the ceremony had to be honored. No weapons could be raised. No blood could be spilled. King Davor stared in silent rage, but he was bound by tradition. Lixa and Jack stepped forward. Together they placed their hands on the heart flame, an ancient device that glowed with their touch. The ship trembled as their souls were marked forever. One flame, one bond, unbreakable. After the ritual, silence fell over the command deck. Then a voice from the Royal Council's channel crackled. The rite is complete. They are now bound. This court has no more power over them. Davor said nothing. He turned his back. Get off my ship, he whispered. Jack and Lixa were escorted to a shuttle. No handcuffs, no guards. They sat together as stars moved again outside the windows. Lixa looked at Jack. I'm not a princess anymore. He smiled. No, you're something better. She leaned her head on his shoulder. They didn't speak for the rest of the flight. Their bond spoke louder than any words. The news spread faster than any royal order. Across every system, every moon, and every starship, aliens watched in shock as the transmission played. Princess Lixa of Zayari has taken a human as her soul flame. For the first time in Zayari, history, a member of the royal bloodline had broken tradition, not with violence but with love, and it could not be undone. In the outer colonies, where mixed-blood children were often hidden, alien parents wept quietly, finally feeling seen. On site, old cargo ships, where human workers were treated like machines, commanders paused to listen, unsure if change had just begun. In the lower levels of the Zayari capital, commoners gathered around glowing screens. Many had mocked the tiny princess. Many had forgotten her. Now they whispered her name again, but this time with respect. Lixa stood beside Jack on a peaceful world near the border zone, far from palaces and councils. A small village welcomed them. No nobles, no rules, just free, people of many kinds. Here, no one looked twice at their bond. Jack helped repair local farms. Lixa taught children to grow light flowers and speak Terran Basic. For once, they lived not as fugitives, but as themselves. But peace couldn't last forever. One evening, a ship landed at the edge of the village. From it stepped someone unexpected, Ambassador Rowan, a Ziyari elder once loyal to the king. He wore no royal badge, just a plain robe and tired eyes. He bowed low before Lixa. "My lady, I come not with orders. I come with a message." Lixa stepped forward. "Speak." "The people are rising," Rowan said. "Your defiance awakened. Something. Small races, ignored castes, outcast children, they look to you. They want a voice." Jack glanced at her. "A revolution?" Rowan shook his head. "Not with weapons, with hope. They want you to speak for them." Lixa stood still, the weight of it all settling on her shoulders. She had been thrown away, she had been forgotten. Now they wanted her to lead. That night, as stars danced above the village, Lixa and Jack sat on the grass, hand in hand. "I don't want a throne," she whispered. "You don't need one," Jack replied. "You already have something stronger." She looked at him. "What's that?" He smiled. "Truth." She closed her eyes. The wind carried voices, not hate, but belief. Not power, but unity. For the first time, she wasn't just his princess. She was their spark. Weeks later, a broadcast lit up the Galactic feeds. It was short, but powerful. Lixa stood tall in front of a simple stone wall, wings open wide, golden eyes shining. "I was called weak, unworthy, too small, too strange. Even my own people rejected me, but I found someone who didn't see what I lacked. He saw what I could become. Now I say this. You are not broken because you are different. You are not weak because you were cast aside. If you feel alone, look up at the stars. Somewhere out there, someone believes in you." "I do." The screen faded to black. And across the galaxy, things began to change. Alien children no longer hid their mixed blood. Soldiers questioned their orders. Even on Ziyari Prime, young nobles asked, "Why did we fear her love?" The king, once feared, sat alone in his silent hall, watching his empire shift. Meanwhile, Jack and Lixa returned to the stars, not as rulers, not as fugitives, but as symbols. He was just a human man. She was the princess no one wanted. Together, they started something greater than any crown, a revolution not of war but of worth.